From humble roots in Westmoreland comes this dynamic leader in the financial services sector. She's led strategic growth across 14 businesses in 12 countries, and also a mother, a daughter, a wife, and a volunteer. How does she make it all work? My guest today is Grace Burnett, the president and CEO of Grace Kennedy Money Services and the Grace Kennedy Financial Group. I'm Archibald Gordon. This is Profile. Grace Burnett, welcome to Profile.
And thank you so much for having me.
It's a wonderful story, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with our viewers, but I want to give a Cliff Notes version at the beginning so people can sort of situate you. So you are the CEO of Grace Kennedy Money Services Group. You've spent a lot of years in the group.
Yes.
Grace at Grace, if you are saying that. Leadership experience, extensive background in insurance, in money services, and in banking, and your current role, as I said, President and CEO of Grace Kennedy Money Services Group. We're overseeing 14 businesses across 12 countries, so that suggests some really long days. Strategic, operational, and relationship management, that's your expertise with a focus on talent development and financial outcomes. But your previous roles, many of them in the group as well, CEO of Grace Kennedy Financial Group, CEO of Grace Kennedy Insurance Segment, and Managing Director at Jamaica International Insurance Company. You successfully rebranded companies, you've led cultural integrations, you've implemented financial literacy, and you also volunteer. So we're talking about Chair of the Women's Leadership Initiative, Board Governor at United Way, Director of the Friends of the Hope Hospice. When you listen to all of these different kind of things, what do you think?
Balance. That it requires a lot of juggling.
A lot of juggling.
Yes.
I'm always interested in how that perspective, how you manage your life now relates to how you grew up. So I want to start there, because this question of balance and of juggling was something that you saw firsthand. You said earlier from your mother. You grew up in Broughton, Westmoreland.
I was born in Broughton, Westmoreland, but I grew up in Clarendon because we traveled with my dad, the policeman, who had us lived in 10 different houses when we were growing up. But it was just seeing my mom, who was mother, who was also, 6 boys and 1 girl, a lot of kids to take care of, who was also a teacher, who was also very active in her church, who was also leading various youth clubs and youth groups. And as she transitioned, would start to chair boards and be involved in Rotary and all sorts of things. So just seeing her and how she navigated all of that was just something that I think stayed with me. And she was my first example, really, of what was possible and what was possible for women. She had no boundaries on herself.
No boundaries, and she was also pushing this idea of education. You said she was a teacher.
She was a teacher, and she made it all the way to being a principal of a all-age school. And she also believed very strongly in education, so she would have pushed that for us as well. I think back to when I decided when I was finished high school and I wanted to work for a year, and I was really enjoying the independence of working and getting that little money for myself. And at the end of the year, she said it was 1 year. And I really wasn't budging. And she came to Kingston and got the applications for UA. And she got the applications, brought them back, and made me fill them out and take them in so that I could get an acceptance for UA. Because she wanted me to change the story by pursuing that educational path.
That's a mother and a teacher, very education-oriented, and also just a sense of balance and being involved in different kinds of things. Your father now, policeman.
Father was a policeman and a farmer. When he retired, he became a full-time farmer. And my father had this philosophy that the sun must not rise before you. And so that has stayed with me for life. I'm awake usually by 4:30, latest 5. And I run. I just hustle through that day right out, because Daddy was that. I tell you, my brothers would actually get up and make up the bed, pull down the sheets, go on the floor and lie down and sleep because they weren't finished. But Daddy had a view that you had to get up and you had to get busy. And so that was Dad's influence on me.
So those are the people who raised you, as I said, grew up in Westmoreland, but born in Westmoreland, but grew up in Clarendon. Mm-hmm. And the next part of your story now involves Clarendon College.
Yes, the best high school in the world. But anyway, so I went to Clarendon College at 10. And I was a little bit of a spectacle. And I'm going to share something with you because my mother, in her usual structured way, kept my very first uniform at Clarendon College. And I brought it to show you. I was an oddity.
This is Clarendon. So you're...
This is my high school uniform.
12?
I was 10.
10.
My high school uniform. So imagine going to high school and everybody turning up, looking through the window and saying, look at her, look at her, look at her. But I realized that being an oddity is not necessarily a bad thing. And that has actually kept me through life because it takes me to, when I applied for that job in insurance and I got a call to say I'd been accepted, from a panel of 3 of my colleagues. And the comment was that we have chosen you because you come from country. So that was a reinforcement for me around being a little different is okay. And so that's been really just the journey, just being a little different is okay.
How did Clarendon College overall shape your understanding of the world, who you went on to become?
A co-educational school, so I've always grown up to be really comfortable, males and females. I also was very active at school, did a lot of dancing and all of that. But then did the dancing so much that I barely scraped through CXC. I mean, did just enough. My mother was very traumatized because I explained to you she was an educator. Everything that has happened to me, I kind of tried to take that lesson. And that was a lesson there. And so, my mother and my father would have been just so big in all of those things happening.
Your father was instrumental in terms of the choice that you made next.
Yes, because as a policeman, he had met this local attorney a lot. And he would just come back from court and talk about this lawyer, this lawyer, this lawyer. And I wanted Daddy to admire me. So I decided to choose law really because of Daddy. But by the time I was finished and I went to the DPP because I'm going to be this criminal lawyer, I actually hated it.
So it's Director of Public Prosecution, State Prosecutor.
Yes, and I did my in-service training. But I couldn't manage it because I have 6 brothers. I saw these young criminals. I saw the conditions. I saw what was happening. And I was like, after all of this, I'm going to really have to let down Daddy. And that made me decide to see what I could do with the degree. I couldn't go back to that first job as a teller because my mother would have had me for that after 5 years. And so I applied for that insurance job.
I see that. So his first job now, this job as a claims officer led to a period in insurance that's led up to today. But we have to, before we get to that, we have to take our first break on Profile. My guest is Grace Burnett. She is the president and CEO of Grace Kennedy Money Services Group. And we'll be right back after these messages.